never know what's going to come at you. Okay, so if I start off with introductions, and then we'll get on to the topics that we've got to discuss. So if I start, Abby, do you want to just say what your role is?
Yes, hi everyone, my name is Abby and I'm a Project Engagement Officer. And working under NHS England Improvement. Sorry, Ellen.
You're going to be taking the notes for the session?
I will do, yes.
Okay. And then Alex, your name's next.
Yeah, hi all. My name is Alex Barnacle. I'm a Policy Advisor in the Disability Unit of the Cabinet Office.
Brilliant, thank you. Amanda?
Amanda, West London Alliance.
I think we know you. We've all heard from you. Carol?
Carol Robinson from NDTI. I'm an associate and also a member of the Preparing for Adulthood team.
Brilliant. Claire?
Hi, my name is Tegit Sen. I'm CEO of DFN Project Search, a support internship model.
Thank you. And Kevin?
Hi everyone, I'm Kevin Holton, so I'm Head of Patient Equalities and Health Inequalities at NHS-EI.
Lucy?
Hi everyone, I'm Lucia Lankovic. I lead on workforce in the National Learning Disability and Autism team at NHS England and Improvement.
Brilliant, thank you. Mark?
I'm Mark Capper, I'm Head of Development at MENCAP.
Okay, lovely. And Mohammed?
I'm Mohammed Yogi, I'm a Programme Manager at NHS Employers.
Fantastic. And Neil?
Hello, Neil, Director for Experience Participation Equalities at NHS England.
Thank you. Okay, so at the start of this session, we've been tasked with answering two questions, as Leandra said. We're the B group, so we've got to answer question B, and that's not a reflection on our skills or anything. We're all A stars at that, I think. But we're going to be looking at question B and question D. But if we get through those, we can look at one of the other questions, which I think you'll have seen on your programme that was sent out. Have you seen those questions?
Yeah.
Okay, great. But what I'd like is one member of the group who would like to feed back, maybe say 3 key points around each of the questions we're going to be answering. Is there anyone who would like to volunteer? Anyone? Should I make a suggestion? Carol, would you like to feed back after the session?
I'm happy to. I didn't want to step in case anybody else wants to do it. Yeah, that's fine.
And so as the person who's going to feed back, Carol will do a summary of the responses and just feed back 3 key points from our discussion around each of the questions. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. So what we've been asked to do is that we've been tasked to discuss what we think the single most important action that we collectively could take to support employment of people with a learning disability in the NHS in the next 6 months. So not a small question really, there's quite a lot to consider there. But we've had a lot of discussion already, and I think we're really lucky. We've got some really some well knowledgeable people in the group, and you're all linked to this in some way or another. So it'd be really good to just have a chat about what you think the single most important action would be to take things forward in the next 6 months. I don't have the answers.
Ellen, can I say what I think just from our area? I'm not talking nationally at all. So there's a whole range of people who might be ready to work within the NHS. The ones that we are aware of are those who have just completed a supported internship or who are going through a supported internship. So they, to me, seem like a priority group. And I think a suggestion would be those who are on last year's programmes who haven't found jobs is a priority that we support those people. Because they've had a year or a part year, and possibly those who are going through the internship this year. So if we're just talking about the next 6 months, then I think if we can really support the Project Search and Project Choice supported internships, that's a really practical thing that we can do. And what I mean by support them is it's the all hands on deck approach here to finding jobs. So what we can do as various stakeholders is communicate with our stakeholder groups about the potential of people with learning disability, the potential of people who've been through a supported internship, who've got great experience and are job ready, What we know from the supported internships is they work on, it's quite a tight ship. They don't have lots of resources and they're working in an increasingly difficult environment. So we have to work with those. So that's the local authority, particularly, I would suggest, where they have the skills groups, economy and skills groups. We have to connect the right people in those projects with those people in the skills groups if they're not already doing that. And any other kind of local employers around it. So our priority is, what can we do to help our current existing project search and project choice sites? Because we want to make sure that these young people are looked after whilst we plan for the future as well. So that would be the single most important thing that we can all do. It's everyone's responsibility, personal contacts, the lot.
Yeah, I think that's definitely key to take that forward. I think the difficulty at the minute is, and we've talked about it before, around the momentum of keeping things going. Yes. But we're talking about all young people and not just young people with additional needs at the moment, which is really the thing that you touched on about sort of them going to the back of the queue, and we have to try and avoid that. I forgot to say at the beginning, if you want to speak, if you can put your hand up, but it worked fine, Amanda. That's not thank you though. It was good to hear from you. But I've got Alex's hand up at the moment. I think yours went up first, and then Claire.
Oh, thank you. Quick off the mark for getting my hand up. Thanks. So what I think, I'm just talking about from the angle of the kind of things that we're thinking about with the national strategy for disabled people. Obviously, that's the main thing, that's a real priority for the government to have delivered by spring next year. And I'm really interested in looking at the levers that the government has created and has at its disposal to really shift the dial for a range of disabled people, including people with learning disabilities, to really thrive in the workplace. And I think there's a range of things that can do, and all employers can do. And I think like transparency is really important. Reporting on the kind of the disability levels of employment in the workplace and on well-being, using the voluntary reporting framework the government launched in November 2018, and making sure that's consistent across NHS trusts. And making sure the government is aware of the reporting that's going on, because it strikes me that I understand this. We're talking specifically about a certain area of disability, but if we're all getting this right in the workplace, then I think we should be reporting on it. I think it should be transparent, and then as many people can know about it as possible, and then we'll know that we're creating those correct environments where people can really thrive. And using the levers at our disposal, using disability confident, getting to be level 3 disability confident leaders, all that kind of stuff, I think can really make a difference.
I think that's also important. I think that the disability confident work can really raise the profile of things that can help. I think that learning disability quite often is not understood as well with learning disability confident employers. So that's something I think we could work on.
Yeah. And I just think reporting, getting out in the open, I think starting those discussions about transparency, I just think is really, really important. And the NHS has got a massive role to play in that, like the civil service also has a massive role to play as a really big employer.
Yeah, and I think just to say that we are working closely with the Department for Education around the civil service. So watch this space. Okay, Claire.
Thank you. So I'm just following on from Alex totally. I think about being transparent about evidence-based and just sharing that. But my point, the reason I put my hand up in the first place is that in the next 6 months, to Amanda's point, we have to get these opportunities to the right people. And so we already know the NHS is doing some great stuff where they partner with lots of us, and it's awesome. But I'm also hearing on the ground, people are so kind of involved in COVID that they just haven't said, look, we can't think about this right now. So it's something about how can we make it as easy as possible. And if I just give you an example, we had a student who had graduated from a project search. He had an interview with a hospital. There was 400 applicants and he got the job, right? Amazing. He turned up on his first day with his job coach. The manager had no idea that he was going to have a job coach and instantly withdrew the offer because they said we cannot have 2 people in the room. Wow. And so it just really opened my eyes to he was the right person for the job, right? He got that job and he said, but it was too hard in the end for that organisation because of the restrictions and so on and so forth. So how do we upskill people quickly and make it as easy as possible for them, because they did want him to have that role. And, you know, I wasn't part of the, you know, what happened in the end, but I don't know, I've gone around that in a long-winded way, but what I'm trying to say is, how can we make this as easy as possible? Because I just want to make this possible. What can we do as a collective to give them the right information quickly?
It'd be interesting to know what the objection was to the job coach.
Having 2 people in the room, it was going to take them over in terms of social distancing.
What about reasonable adjustment? We need to be asking those questions. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. I think Mohammed, you had your hand up next.
Yeah, I think there's a big communication piece here. I think in terms of, from an NHS employee's perspective, our key target audience is very much HR directors, and having that discussion with HR directors. And I think somebody mentioned earlier the importance of leadership, and those people can really open doors. And for example, next month we've got International Day of Disability on the 3rd, so we can do a lot of work around disabilities, and I'd love to capture some of the North West work around Project CERT, etc. But also, Stuart mentioned again the summit next March. But I think it's just that drip, and just communicating to the HRDs that, you know, that figure of 80% employment rate, that is something brilliant. You know, that's something that we should be shouting about. You know, so I think there's a big communication piece from NHS employees' perspective, just reminding HRDs what they can do, and to be bold as a major employer, you know, going that extra yard. You know.
Yeah, I think that boldness and that bravery is something that we really could capitalise on, and keeping that momentum up. The drip bit, I think, is where we've been for a long time, and I think we're actually seeing more of a momentum now. You know, you think about the success rates we're seeing. I think, Kevin, your hand was up next. I hope I'm getting these in the right order. I'm sorry if I go in the wrong order.
Thanks very much. I've had a sudden the sun has suddenly woken up and come through my window. So hold on a sec.
Lucky you.
Very unusual.
It's raining here.
So I think just a couple of points, picking up on what other people have said. So I think the first thing is, in our engagement with the NHS and with systems, where we've talked to them about, as we started to move to the recovery phase, and also now that we're kind of moving back to lockdown, I've heard quite a lot of organisations and people working out in systems say essentially, and I'm kind of paraphrasing, but you know, we're kind of too busy to do health inequalities, and we have to address the immediate challenges that are confronting us. So I think, as we are articulating to the wider public that the kind of NHS is open for business, I think we need to get a message out that not only is it open for business for our patients, but also in relation to people that we would want to employ and can help us through the challenging time that we have available to us. So that's my kind of first point. And if we can be kind of consistent and in that message and use all of our channels of communication and networks that we have to communicate that out, I think that would be beneficial. I think the second thing is kind of linking up to the data and analysis point. We have kind of chairing the session, Mike, who is one of the newly appointed Director of Equalities and the Chief People Officer Directorate, and there was some kind of content in the refreshed kind of people plan about the importance of opening up employment opportunities. Prior to April, my team kind of led on the workforce race equality standards, so there's a lot of information that we have collated in relation to the kind of res reporting requirements. So I think thinking how it is that we can link into the implementation of the people plan and the networks and infrastructure that they have available to them as well, I think is something that we could usefully do in the next 6 months.
That'd be really, really good, I think. That communication, which is what Mohammed touched on as well. I don't know whether it was Lucy had her hand up next or Mark, but I'm going to go to Lucy because she's on the top of the. Oh, Lucy, you put your hand down. Okay, so Mark, it's over to you. Oh no, you're there.
No, I didn't want to leave it up. I always get the legacy hand situation, so I thought I'd be proactive and do it while I thought about it. Okay. I just echoing what people have said. I'm sorry, I'm new into the learning disability and autism team, and so looking at employment. So I feel like I'm joining probably on the scale of a 1 to 10 at 7, where 1 maybe has happened before. So sorry, in terms of the question though, around the momentum and the next 6 months, I think for me, in hearing what I've heard this morning, you've got all of the right people in the room, but again, echoing what people have said around leadership, ownership and accountability, and I think realistically it's building on Claire's point about, as well, around simple, what are we actually asking the system to do, and being really clear about that. And I think that's where it falls down around equalities, is where we'll push out a load of policies and then lots of people translate those in lots of different ways. So I think we really need to be clear about the how and the what, and then make it as really simple as for people. And I'm talking about our whole approach to this, thinking about we've got the NHS Leadership Academy have come into NHS England Improvement. They've got leadership programs which we need to be looked at in terms of accessibility for the people that we employ. We've got how do we define talent and succession planning, and what does that look like? We've got the management graduate training scheme in the NHS, and the amount of money that goes to training those individuals, and the lack of inclusivity and accessibility for people with learning disability and autism. So I'm talking about how we create opportunities across all ages for learning disability and autism. What does that strategy look like within the next 6 months, either in a short, medium or long term approach to how we can feasibly do things and take proactive action. But I think without that joining up and of working to that common vision, everybody's going to be going off on a tangent and our energy is going to be wasted. So I think it's really clear to me that we need to have something like that. So sorry if it exists and I'm not aware of it, but I really would like to see something like that. And that's kind of the model that I've got in my head, and the conversations that I'm having internally to think about how we can progress this agenda. Last night I was having a conversation with the Improving People's Practices team, and where they're looking at rewards for employees, so an employee reward strategy, and what do we really mean about that for learning disability and autism, and if that's being pushed out to our system and partners as well. So it's things like that.
That's really, that'd be a really good thing to progress with. Does anyone else on the call know anything about an approach that Lucy's talking about, within the NHS? No? Okay. So Mark, over to you.
Thank you. So yeah, I guess we're perhaps not as engaged with NHS trusts as some of the other sort of support organisations. So we're doing some work in Oxford and planning stuff in Bristol. So in terms of 6 months, happy to contribute, but perhaps not quite in the position to work collectively, perhaps as we would like. But I guess my overarching point would be around collaboration, and perhaps from the perspective of my organisation would be about the longer term beyond 6 months, and really trying to have a bit of an impact in terms of coming together as organisations to say, how do we make our approach with the NHS trusts clear, so that there aren't sort of multiple different choices and creating confusion within trusts by offering different programmes. So particularly from our perspective, the type of project choice, project search models, how other programmes can complement that type of provision, either giving people move on options or creating options for people who are not eligible for those programmes. And you're taking Hugh's point from earlier on around age limitations of some of the education programs, because traineeships are also capped at 25. So, you know, realistically, if you're looking at an education program, only apprenticeships are available.
Yeah.
And even Kickstart is based at, is targeted at young people. So it would be around collaboration for me, and potentially even things like lobbying. So, you know, in the last probably 10 years, we've seen as an organisation quite a rapid decline in local authority commissioning of supported employment programmes. Yeah. So that's where the perhaps wraparound support and the support for the over 25s historically came from. And a lot of local authorities decommissioned when work choice came in and started seeing that as the be all and end all, and the DWP programs just haven't ever really delivered for this client group. So it's perhaps lobbying national and local government to say we also need this type of program for the over 25s, and recognising the power of a group like this to put a case like that forward.
I think that's a really important point, Mark, because we have got lots of people who don't have education, health and care plans, who can't access a lot of the programmes we're talking about. And this is about where we want to be more inclusive in our approach. And I think inclusion should mean everybody, not just people over there who've got education, health and care plans. So I think, Mohammed, I think you put your hand up next.
Yeah, I think just a quick one in terms of, I'm just thinking in terms of, you know, if you're working at a local level, at a trust level, you must sometimes feel bombarded with receiving lots of information around disability, whether it's the Workforce Disability Equality Standard, Disability Confident One Week, Learning Disability Pledge, etc. I think there's something about trying to consider working together a lot more and forming a joint message or something, how they all relate together. And how can that be understood better at local level? Otherwise, you run the risk of people, you know, feeling competing, or you know, or what should I focus on more than others, etc. You know.
Yeah, and I think there has to be more than one solution, you know, as Mark said. Yeah. Okay, Kevin, is your hand still up, or is that a legacy hand? I don't. Oh, it's gone down. Claire, your hand's up now.
I was just also going to say, we've got some good evidence about some of the NHS and England sites who now have embedded job coaches. And in terms of a quick strategy, embedded job coaches would be an awesome one, because they don't just support those with learning disabilities at all, do they? But it's a very, culturally, it's brilliant, and it will always make that transition to employment easier and better supported. So there's a tip.
That's really interesting, Claire. Carol and I had a conversation about that only today, about the fact that job coaching availability is key across all the ages. And Carol also endorses the point Mark made about having several schemes to meet a range of needs and ages. So I think that there's some really, really useful points that have come out of that discussion. And I just want to, has anybody got a burning issue that they want Carol to capture to feedback? 1 minute left on this question. I've got to keep us to time.
All I would say, it's really, from a government perspective, it's really interesting to hear the expertise. If people want to feed in ideas, thoughts to the national strategy on disabled people, please contact me. I'll put my email in the chat.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you. Can I just quickly then run through some of the things people have said?
Please.
Because if we're only going to have 3, we need to agree which 3. So remembering with last year's and this year's interns being a priority, and identifying jobs and communicating the potential of those interns and to employers. Alex said we need the national strategy we need to have evidence, we need to use existing levers to develop a more strategic approach, such as disability confident and the data that's already being required from NHS trusts about percentages in the workplace. Claire said, how can we make it easy for employers to employ in COVID-19 environment? Bear in mind, everything is about the next 6 months. It's supposed to be answered in relation to the next 6 months. Mohammed said HR processes needing to change, that we need to be celebrating more the things like the 80% employment rate and us being bold. Kevin said that I think this was really endorsing the point about needing to make it straightforward that for employers. We need to get the message out that NHS is open for business, not just for patients, but also for employees.
Yeah.
Then several points about, I think Kevin also said this, how can we link into the implementation plan? So stuff about how we develop a strategy, and Lucy endorsed that as well. Said we need to think about the leadership programs, how things, existing systems and strategies that are in place need to be made more accessible to everybody, and not just, she wasn't just talking about young people.
I think that's pretty good.
And then Mark said, how can we complement project search, project choice with things like traineeships, apprenticeships? At the moment, we've got an issue about competing approaches to employers, was something that Mohammed said. I hope I've got most of that right. And then we had the point about embedded job coaches. So brilliant. I've got loads. Are you happy for me to just pick out 3 of those, or are there 3 that particularly resonate with people?
I think just to say, just building on a point Amanda made about DFE and DWP, and thinking about supported interns returning, and how that's going to be supported through the government departments. I think if they are going to be supported, we need guidance out quickly around that, because it took a long time to get that out in the first lockdown. It didn't come out until June, I think, in the end, and young people have been at home, not in the workplace. So I think if we're going to be repeating things, we maybe need some clear messages coming from those 2 departments. I don't know whether people feel the same. Yeah, good. Okay, I think they're good points, Carol. Thank you.
I'll use that then as one of the points and tie it in with what Amanda said. Okay. Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so we're trying to keep to time. We're a little tiny bit over now, and I think we have until 3:40, I think it is. Gosh, so we better get a move on. So we've got to talk about question D, which is, what would you as a group most like to see as a follow-up from today? And I think we've started those discussions already, so it'd be really good to just hear from you. Okay, somebody put their hand up and put it down again. Oh, Claire.
Sorry. I would like to see every trust have a commitment, exactly to what Mark was saying. So there's different pathways in each trust linked to people with learning disabilities transitioning into employment.
Brilliant. Yep. Amanda, your hand's up.
Yep, similar to Mark and Claire, that I think we need perhaps a national strategy, but let's try and do it more locally. Each trust needs to have a strategy and talk about where along that path where they fit. So that's what we're trying to do in our area. We'll let you know how that goes.
Yeah, and it'd be good if there was yes, localised, but that there actually is a national message communicated. So that's what you mean, yes?
Yeah, national Brilliant. And local, yeah.
Thank you. Mohammed, I think your hand was up next.
Yeah, I think for myself, in terms of, again, talking in terms of how we communicate to HR directors on a regular basis. And what would be lovely is almost like a one-page, what the offer is, what the support is, etc. So they can see clearly what they can do, what the support is out there, and how can they get started, basically, and a bit about what others have done as well. Something simple as that could really give employees that outline overview of what they can do going forward.
Brilliant, and I think the work that Leander's involved in is focusing on something like that for the NHS. So, maybe we can talk about that or ask about it at another stage.
Definitely.
Mark.
Yeah, so I guess just sort of reiterating the point there that around the multiple programmes. I think it's great in West London where you've got the fantastic work that Amanda's done to pull everything together, but that doesn't happen elsewhere. So it's almost sort of recognising whose role is that. you know, in the absence of you know, an organisation like the West London Alliance that has pulled everything together and is exploring how to bring these various strands under one heading, avoids that sort of duplication. How do we replicate that approach elsewhere where there's not an equivalent of West London Alliance? And I guess really identifying whose role that is. You know, is it the NHS Trust? Is it the local authority? Is it a cluster of local authorities? You know, who picks that up? Because yeah, I think it's almost having something branded under a heading where all the programs can sit, so it's less confusing for the employer. But it's difficult to bring that together without a lead.
So that brings us back to leadership again, does it?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So Carol, I think that's a really crucial point to take down. Would you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Would everyone agree with that? Okay. Lucy, thank you for posting in the chat your diagram map. Do you want to say a little bit about it?
Just quickly, it's not, as I've said in there, it's the start of the journey basically, and for me it's just a download of my thoughts around how that could be you know, thought through and added to. I'm looking to co-produce that with colleagues within our own team who we employ with learning disability and autism, and this is also helping to stimulate the conversations internally. So I'm looking internally and externally. Yeah, it's really just that thought piece, and I'm really looking to engage and enhance that. And I'd like to, you know, think about who can help to, you know, do more of that, and to maybe see that swept up into whatever the strategy or approach is.
Fantastic. Kevin, could I ask a question? Is that something that you would work with Lucy on?
Yeah, more than happy to link in with Leander and others in the organisation to do that. If you can, you'll have Leander's email address. So yeah, if you do that, that would be brilliant.
She is aware. Thanks, Kevin, as well. So I'll I've been annoying her already.
If you want to copy me into anything, I'll put my email address in the chat box.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
And that's a brilliant result from today already. Amanda, your hand as well.
Just building on really what Mark said, and also looking at what Lucy's just put up there, it is excellent, isn't it? That we certainly need to sort of map out at a national level and also local level where all the interfaces and provision is. But I think the reason we've managed to sort of get as far as we have so far is, you know, let's be frank, there was funding for a part-time post at the West London Alliance that is dedicated to this work across the whole pathway and across the system. So that's how we've done it, because I think we've all talked about this for so many decades, really, haven't we? And it's about who takes leadership, who takes accountability, and it is a multi-system approach, isn't it, that's needed. So it's somebody that can go across the system is helpful in this work, because I don't think anybody else is taking the lead in it. The local authorities do in some areas, don't in others. Is it the role of the NHS or not? Question mark. You know, it's everybody's responsibility, isn't it? But you know, when it's everybody's responsibility, often people don't step up to lead. So I think leadership is a key issue, actually, or lack of it.
Yeah, that's a really really good way of summing it up, I think, Amanda. Thank you. And it fits in with what everybody else has been saying. Are there any other points that people really want to make around what they'd like to see coming out of today? If someone hasn't spoken yet, Neil, have you any points you'd like to make?
No, I've been listening and learning. Thank you. And you know, I think obviously I said at the start, I got interested in connections with the volunteering agenda, and I think heard from the first session that there are some limitations of that. So I think I just wanted to see where this conversation went, and then to think about how we might address some of the, I think, similar goals we've got on the volunteering programme. But no, it's been really helpful. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that we hadn't missed you off. Okay, so Carol's job again. Carol, your hand's up.
I just wanted to say that I suppose I was hoping that if we're going to really drive this agenda forward and in a practical kind of way, we absolutely do have to have some commitment, financial commitment. And I know we've got it through Access to Work, but to the job coach aspect of this, because the support won't be there unless the NHS actually somehow gets involved with the job coaching side of things. And it's all very piecemeal, it feels. Sometimes it works really well. Sometimes it feels like it's really difficult to find a job coach.
Yeah.
We've got all sorts of models, but I'd love to think that for every trust that says it's going to have a strategy around this, that there is going to be a fund that they can apply to ensure that people are trained for job coaching. There is money from Access to Work for some of that job coaching to happen, but in itself it isn't enough. There needs to be somebody who kind of sets up the training, makes sure that people are working to a good standard, all of the things that you would expect around that. And I just feel that we could talk all we like about good strategies and leadership, but if we don't have the nuts and bolts of the support there, we're not going to make this work.
And I think that fits in well with what Lucy was talking about around finance sort of supporting training and management stuff. So maybe there's some way we could look at that. Yeah. Mohammed, your hand's up.
Oh, sorry, that was a legacy hand. Apologies.
Okay. And Amanda. Are you finished? Okay. Carol, then do you want to summarise a few points that we're going to take back around questions? Oh, Mark, sorry, Carol, Mark's hand's up.
Ellen, are we not only supposed to take one?
One point from question D?
Is it not one?
I thought it was 3 points.
Okay, well, we still have to settle on 2.
Mark has something to say. Maybe this will focus our minds.
Picking up most strongly 2 points from what has been said so far under question D. Well, there's 3 I think really we need to discuss. One is that every trust has a commitment to different pathways.
Yeah.
And I guess I can tie in, if I'm clever, that there needs to be somebody who coordinates and leads that activity across the system, not just within the NHS, but also across education, the supported employment aspect, and so on. So I think we can make that one probably. Okay. Great. And then the other one is around finance and support for making any strategy that's put in place actually a reality. So that's very easy to say. I think we might come back from that one. Is there anything specific that people would want me to say in relation to the funding and the support?
So Mark had his hand up just a minute ago. I didn't know whether there was a final point you wanted to make, Mark, that might bring some clarity there.
It was really just a bit of a suggestion that in terms of the sort of job coaching and access to work, for an organisation of the size, the roles within NHS trusts, I'd be really keen to see the Disability Minister really looking at access to work and allowing employers to have a resident job coach. Absolutely. That if they've been able to demonstrate an ongoing use of job coaches, that rather than having to make individual claims consistently, that they have standard resident job coaches, and they, it may be quarterly reports just to demonstrate hours that have been used, but to take out some of the bureaucracy and some of the issue and around ongoing support post employment, that employers are allowed that flexibility available from a job coach.
Brilliant, thank you, Mark. I think that sums up where we need to end, and I think that was a really good point to end on. Any final things people want to say before we come out of this meeting and then go into the other meeting again? Everybody okay? Anybody else? Anything else to add? Thank you. That was a brilliant discussion, really good. And I think the meeting today, you know, from the start has been just full of really good ideas and full of great contributions. So thank you all very much. And I'll see you in the other room, if that's possible. Okay, thanks. Bye.
Bye.